So, some of you may be thinking, best game of the decade? Really? I mean, what about God of War Ragnarok or Elden Ring? And well, to that I say, how is this not the best game of the decade? At least so far in this decade. This game, it not only has great mechanics that aren't seen in honestly any other game I've ever seen, it also has a breathtaking open world, and it implemented those mechanics perfectly. It took what Breath of the Wild did and it made it better. Much better. But that's not the only thing it did amazingly. There's so much more. And to go over all of those things, I made a bit of a list. But before I go over anything on that list, let me read over this short disclaimer. Disclaimer. Gameplay footage is from trailers and other people. I couldn't record my own due to no capture device. Also, everything I say is completely my own opinion. I just hope you hear me out until the end of the video on why I love this game so much. Lastly, everything I say from here on out is probably improvised and I didn't script any of it. It's yeah. Hope you enjoy. So with that list, I wrote down a question. Why is this game so different to others? Well, the first main thing is I wanted to play it and it was interesting. I mean, every day I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm gonna play Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom today. This is gonna be a great day. I'm gonna get so much done. Woo! Yeah! But there's other things as well. I mean, that's not the only thing. It's not just a fun game, okay? One of the main things that made it so fun is that it felt like a true innovation, with things that I couldn't get in other games. With most games that release, I feel like in the past 5 to 10, like in the past 5 years, I feel like every game that has released, at least most of them, they've been just copies of other games, and there's nothing that I couldn't get from another game. It might have slightly better graphics, it might have a little better controls, but overall it's basically the same thing that someone else did not that long ago, honestly. And everything feels like a repeat. It feels like every game I play is just same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. And I get this one game, it's like, ooh, this does one thing cool. And then it's like, there was only that one thing that was cool. But with this game, it feels like I got multiple things that were cool. Starting off, you have the abilities, obviously. Like you have the Ultra Hand, and that was the building mechanic that was, you know, showed off a lot. And that was really cool, but also like the Ascend feature, just being able to ascend through things was very helpful. And in the Rewind feature, oh my god, that made the game so much easier. And also, every time I used the Rewind feature, it was like, I can't express how useful it was to be able to climb things by jumping onto things and then rewinding them and using the Ultra Hand to move them around and then rewinding that, and it worked so nicely together. And then there was what was the other ability? God damn it, I had to go and look that up. It's the fuse ability. I'm sorry, I was just thinking about the build ability and not the fuse ability. Like, the fuse is so useful as well because you can just make weapons out in the open world. You can literally use anything and it feels like you're making a new weapon. And it removes that sort of fear that I had in the first game that my good weapons are going to break and I won't be able to do anything. I mean, I still had that because I wanted my good fuse weapons. Like, I want to use those later on. Like, I don't want to use this 120 damage weapon on a Bokoblin. I want to use it on Ganon or something, you know? So there was still that little bit there, but it made it so everything, like, everything could break and it didn't feel bad for it to break because I knew I'd get, like, another weapon. There'll just be a weapon right around the corner and I'll be all good. And that was very useful. The next thing, and this is probably one of the greater things in this game, is that no session feels like a repeat of the last session. It doesn't feel like I'm doing the same thing every time. You find in a lot of modern games, especially ones that you can play for thousands of hours, like you could probably do with Tears of the Kingdom, you just do the same thing every single time. It doesn't feel different to play the game every time. It's just, okay, log on, do my dailies, okay, done. Okay, let's do the next quest and the next quest. Okay, did the 5 of the same quests basically every single day. And you know, it's the same thing. It's repeat content. It feels the same. But in Tears of the Kingdom, nothing feels the same every time you play. It feels like you're learning something new every single time you play. And that, like, the build feature and the fuse feature help a lot. And the fact that every weapon, it feels different in some way. Like every later game weapon has an ability of some sort that makes you play differently. For example, the gloom weapons, maybe I shouldn't have spoiled that, but the gloom weapons, right, they take hearts away from you. So you have to play on lower hearts, and you could potentially die by using those gloom weapons. But the thing is, with the gloom weapons, right, they do really high amounts of damage. Like, they do 40 plus damage for a one-handed sword, if I remember correctly. It does 40 damage, 41 damage. And that's insane. And that's without fusing or anything. Like, that's an insane amount of damage, but you could kill yourself, right? You could kill yourself by using that weapon. And then that adds a different gameplay element. And then you keep finding this different, like, items and stuff. And there's hundreds of different items. And I mean, at least 50 different weapons. There might be hundreds of different weapons as well. But you can fuse each of these items to these different weapons, and you can fuse weapons to other weapons, and you can make all of these different combinations, so every time you play it doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing, and then you can... Okay, so then you can build a bunch of different stuff as well. Sorry, I'm getting a little too excited. I love this game so much because it doesn't feel like a repeat session every single time. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing the same thing. I play a lot of gotcha games, right? And, yeah, you literally do the same thing every single day until a new content drop comes out, and, you know, you do that for 2 days. What is different? And then you do those 2 days, and you might do a few events here and there. But overall, everything's just the same. You have this daily 20-minute grind, and then you log off to go do your other 20-minute grind on another game, and then you log off to do your 20-minute grind on another game, you know, so on and so on. And then other, like, MMOs and stuff, it's the same sort of thing, except it's not really dailies, it's more daily activities, and you still have to do these. They act like dailies, they're just, you know, random playlists and stuff of different activities that you've already done. While in Tears of the Kingdom, you log on, well, not log on, you just open the game, and then you go in and you play, and get this, it's a bit different every time. You can always choose to be creative in a different way, and there's no set way to do things. And since there's no set way to do things, you could one day build a car, right? And then the next day you're building a giant mech, and that's the way you get around that day. And then the next day you're building a giant plane, and that's the way you get around that day. And then, you know, you keep finding these different ways to get around and these different ways to do things in the game. And that's one of the best things about the game. Like, it feels like a meaningful experience. Everything I did in the game felt meaningful, and it felt different every time I played. Now, I only played about like 200 hours of the game, so I haven't experienced, you know, everything the game has to offer, but like, I've done almost all of the shrines. I've done the story, obviously. I've explored 90% of the world. And that's after 200 hours. I still haven't completed everything. Like, I still haven't explored everything. Let alone done all of the shrines or anything else. And I'm probably not going to go back to the game for a bit just because I want to have those things there. I'm just taking a break for now. But another thing, right? You had multiple routes to do everything. Like, it wasn't only like the quests and stuff, right? Like, it wasn't only the shrines, and it wasn't only the quests. It was everything that you had multiple ways around doing. For example, there's the Fierce Deity set of armor in the game. Now you can find this quest and, you know, you can do that quest to get it, and you can decipher all of these like riddles and stuff to find where the armor is. But another thing you can do is you can just go out into the world and find it. Like, they're in locations where you think that something might be hidden, so you could just go and find it. And then you know, 100 hours later in the game, you come along that quest, and then at the end of that quest, right? It's not like you get nothing because you've already done it. No, you get the Fierce Deity sword. So you went all around the map and you found these things, and then you find this other thing because you already found these other things. And like, everything feels rewarding even when you've already done it. Like, I feel like a lot of games that implement like this kind of exploration in the world where you can pre-complete the quests, right? After you complete the quest, you go back to the person, you complete the quest, right? Or you find out that you already had the quest completed and then you just hand it in. All you do is hand it in and then you don't get anything for it. It's just, well, quest complete now. I guess that's it. But in Tears of the Kingdom, right, you still get stuff and you have like an ending part to the quest as well, and it does something cool every time. Like, I didn't feel like anything I did didn't have meaning, and every reward I got, it felt useful, because most of what the quests give you isn't just, you know, Amber number 2059 or more rupees and more rupees and more rupees. I mean, even with rupees, like, rupees feel great to get because it's so hard to get rupees. Like, unless you're selling everything, like, you do not get a lot of rupees in the game, and those feel useful because you don't have that many. And like, you can buy stuff back late in the game, like the Hylian shield. I don't think that's a spoiler because you could do the same in the first game, so yeah. And you got, like, you can't get that many rupees, and then once you start gaining rupees, you have to spend it. And then when you actually get rupees from a quest, that feels meaningful still. But generally a quest that has rupees as a reward doesn't just give you rupees, it has a longer, bigger quest that also gives you items, or gives you a piece of armor, or gives you a weapon. Like, you don't feel unrewarded for doing anything. And that's an amazing thing that this game has managed to do. Like, your time feels meaningful. That's one of the biggest things in this game. And like, even though they're reusing the map from the first game, with all of these quests and all of these routes to do things, and even the map has changed a little bit at least, and I mean, there's new areas to the map. I'm not going to spoil them, but there's new areas to the map, and the map is basically 3 times the size. Like, but even in that original area, it still feels good to explore because there's all of these new quests and new things to find, and it changed around from the first game. It feels great. Okay, it just took another minute to recoup a bit because, oh god, I rant on about this game. I could rant on about it forever, basically. But I'd like to go over the last 2 points. The game felt like you make your own accomplishments. Like, you have your own personal goals on top of the story. Like, the story is a baseline. You can get through that in, like, you know, 40 hours, 30 hours, 30 to 40 hours, right? You can get through that story, right? But it only felt like a baseline because there's so many other things in the game that make you want to take your attention off that storyline and just experience the world and have your own personal goals, right? There's this, spoiler warning, there's this enemy called a Gleeok. It's basically a massive dragon. It's an elemental dragon, 3-headed Hydra dragon, right? And it's sick, right? And, you know, you have the King Gleeoks as well. And those feel like your own personal goal. You come across one of those, you die to those a million times, and then you're like, okay, I'm coming back later to defeat you. I will get you later. And that's your own personal goal. And it feels great. And another thing about those Gleeoks, they're hard. A lot of enemies in this game are hard. Like, I died multiple times. That did not happen in the first game, and it doesn't happen in a lot of games today where I just die. Like, and it wasn't even about stats or anything. I could still die when I had like 20 hearts. Like, this game actually feels challenging. Obviously, you can get stronger weapons and stuff like that to make it easier for yourself, but it still feels like you need a degree of skill and a degree of actually trying. You need to try in this game to get good. It's sort of like Dark Souls. It's much easier than Dark Souls, obviously. It's not as hard as Dark Souls, but it has that same sort of rewarding feeling when you beat something. Like, it doesn't, like, with how many enemies there are and stuff, it doesn't feel like Dark Souls where any enemy could kill you, but certainly does feel like going up against these hordes of enemies that one of them could kill you. Like, they will whittle down your health and then eventually kill you. Especially if you don't have healing items. Healing items obviously make it a lot easier. And if you pre-prep for stuff, you're going to kill it. But there is hard parts to the game, and there's challenging things to do, and most of those are optional. And then there's multiple things that make it easier. Like, you know, once you get to the final boss fight, if you have the Master Sword, it's going to be a lot easier, right? And you get to the end of the game, and you have that Master Sword, you have all of this gear, it's going to be easier and it's not going to be that hard. So there is ways to make it easier, but it's still, like, there's still other challenges, right, outside of the main story, like the Gleeoks, what make the game challenging if you want that. It feels sort of like optional challenge, and there's ways to get around that for people who don't want that challenge, but the game is challenging, and I don't believe there's a easy mode, so, you know, if you don't like really challenging games, or just any challenge in a game, this game might not be the best for you, but I feel like you will still be able to beat it, even if you're not that good at video games. And, like, that challenge to the game is great. Anyway, that was my last point. I feel like I ranted on for way too long about all the things that were great in this game, but I just needed to go over that points. Like, those points, I feel, are some of the most important points to what make this game great. And I feel like overall the game is almost perfect. And you should play this game. You should play Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, because it is a perfect game that is so fun. And the only downside is 30 FPS. But if you need 60 FPS to enjoy a game, go touch grass. Yeah, go touch grass, loser. You don't need 60 FPS. Peace.